Hello, welcome to another review in my series Jackie's Review. Today I'm gonna review Tribune, Primus Inter Pares. It's a slightly older game. The game came out in 2007, is published in the US by Fantasy Flight Games and in Germany by Edelberger Spieleverlag, I hope I pronounced that right. The game plays in about an hour and a half. It accommodates 2 to 5 players, although you want to play it with 3+ in my opinion. And it's a worker placement and card management game. And let's see what is it about. This is the main board on which a game of Tribune takes place. It depicts the city of Rome, circa 1st century before Christ, in which you represent political leaders trying to gather influence over different factions in the city. The board is divided in 2 parts, a city part and the faction part. You will be placing your workers in both parts, respectively trying to gain cards that you will then use to influence factions. Cards come in 7 different suits corresponding to the 7 different factions. We have gladiators, we have legates. Here, let's see if you can see this. Yes. Praetorians, plebeians, patricians, vestal virgins, and senators. They all have a different value, although you will never confront values from different colored cards. They are only used to have a different combination of cards when vying for influence inside the same faction. You will have a certain amount of workers that varies depending on how many players are in the game. Workers are these robed meeples representing clients in Rome in your game, and you will be placing them on the spots on the board. And as it most worker placement, you place one of your workers, the next player places one, then you place again, and so forth and so on. There are 2 parts of the board. One is the city, where you will be getting cards, and one is the faction part, where you will be spending cards. And since the placement is in the same phase, but the resolution is in 2 different phases, you will have to carefully planning, gathering the resources, and having the chances to spend them. The game is not very long, both in time and in turns, so you cannot just ignore the factions for the moment being, let's say. You must always fight for political influence, and if you miss a round or 2, you will be in a very bad shape. Let's see in a little bit of detail what these 2 phases correspond to. Each turn, the board will be populated with cards that you will be up for trying to get. When you place a worker in this left side of the board, you simply pay, when you take him back, you will pay the money and get the corresponding card. These 2 cost 1, so they are cheaper. These ones cost 3. But beside that difference, the Terme and the Forum Romanum work exactly the same. You pay, you get the card. The Latrine, latrine if you want, makes for a lot of jokes when you play with the wrong people. You meet someone, you can either pay to get that card or discard a card to get that amount of money. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility, but you don't know what's coming. Here in the Curia, you will meet groups of people. There will be group of cards which value 5 or higher. So see, it was 2, 1, and a 3, then we stopped. A 7 is higher than 5 and 6 is higher than 5. In this case, you place your meeple and then you will discard one card to get the entire group of cards. So for these, it's just additional chances to get the cards that you need. Here is you get a bunch of cards in exchange for one. The Atrium Auctionarium is another way to get cards or money, as the latrine is. When the first player goes there, you reveal 2 of the cards. If anyone else is interested in joining you in the Atrium Auctionarium, you will reveal the 3rd card, and then you undergo a secret bidding. You will take some denarii, the game currency, in your hand, bid. Whoever bids the most pays the other player and gets the 3 cards. So it's a good way to get cards, but also you will get money if you lose. In the Catacombs, when you go to the Catacombs, let's see if I can show you more clearly, you choose the spot you are going on. 4, 3 or 2, you can choose whatever you want as long as it is free. So why would this will be the amount that you pay, but why would you want an higher one? Simply put, this because the Catacombs host 5 refugees, I guess. When you resolve your worker, you go through the cards, pick one if you want, and pay whatever the cost is. So going first helps you having a better choice, but costs you more. There are 2 other spots, but I will explain them later because they wouldn't make much sense to you right now. So the cards are worth nothing per se in the game, but they are the only way that you have to get control over factions. And what makes it really interesting, what makes Tribune really interesting, is that you get bonuses when you take control of factions as long as you control them. So from one side, you will be wanting to keep your factions to get better bonuses, but over and over during the turns. But on the other side, first you can never reinforce your position, so you will only have to hope that other people cannot take it and try to prevent them from gathering the resources they need. But on the other side, you also want to constantly gain new controls over these factions. Why do you want to take control of the factions? Well, another interesting thing about Tribune is that you are not vying for points. As you see, there is no scoring track around the board. What you are trying to do is gathering victory conditions. Each game you play will have a different set of victory conditions indicated by a card. There are different cards. This one is for 5 players and is yellow. It means a medium length game. You could have a short game with green or a red game with a long game with red, and these indicate which conditions you are vying for. They will usually have the Tribune, that can be obligatory in some games or not, so become a Tribune, we will see what it means. Favor of the Gods, 3 legions, 8 laurels, 4 faction markers, and 25 denarii. So the bottom part of the board, of the card, indicates a variable quantity. So that is what makes the game very different. Sometimes you will need a bunch of money to get the victory condition. Some other times, like this one, it will be far cheaper. But one of the conditions is always faction markers, and faction markers are corresponding to the faction. You get them as soon as you control a faction for the first time. So that's another reason that helps you move the game forward, because you constantly want to switch your controls to get new faction markers. All the other things that we mentioned, laurels, legions, money, favor of the gods, and Tribune, come into the game through control of the factions. So let's go back to the board and see how control of the factions work. When you are trying to get control of a faction, you simply remove your guy and place some cards in front of you. In this case, I'm removing from gladiators, and I have to play at least 2 gladiators. So the first time I try to take control of the gladiators, I just need 2 of them. Doesn't matter the number, I just need gladiators, so orange cards. In following rounds, when someone tries to take control of the gladiators away from me, they must play either a higher number of cards or a higher total of value in the cards. So sometimes you will need exactly the same amount of cards to beat them, otherwise you will need far more, especially with the other factions in which the range for numbers is big. So when you have plebeians ranging from 3 to 9, to beat a 7-8 with numbers will be hard, but you could beat them with lower plebeians for, in this case, a total of 12, although with more cards. So whenever you beat someone for the control of the faction, or you take the control for the first time, you immediately gain something. The takeover bonus, so-called, is not usually very big, but it's a nice little addition to what you need. Gladiators give you legions, legates give you laurels, praetorians give you card, plebeians give you cards and let you take away one card from one controlling faction, patricians give you laurels, Vestal Virgins give you favor of the gods, and I will go through that in a moment, and senators give you laurel. But the most interesting thing, besides getting the faction markers that we mentioned before, is that as long as you control them, at the end of each round you will get a benefit. And this is where the big benefits come from. The gladiators take all the money that was put in the catacombs. If you remember, during the cards gathering phase, people were paying the catacombs to choose cards, and with the gladiators you can have them all back. With the legates, these yellow guys here, you can either pay money to get a legion that contributes to your victory condition, or you can get a scroll. A scroll is a little token that makes for another interesting dynamic in the game. When you get the scroll, a little SPQR scroll, let's see if I can put it into focus. Yes, here it is. Okay. You will keep it in front of you until some effect of the game will allow you to become Tribune and flip it to the other side. How do you do that? Simply by having control of one of two couples of faction at the end of the round. It's either plebeians and patrician, or Vestal Virgins and senators. So it's very hard to get because you need the legates of the senators to get the scroll, and then at the end of one turn you need to have both one of these pairs. The last thing you can get, we mentioned money, we mentioned legions. Praetorians give you one legion per turn. The last thing you can get is the favor of the god from the Vestal Virgins. Whenever you control the Vestal Virgins, you have the temporary favor of the god. Once you have had the Vestal Virgins for at least once, you can go to the Pantheon here that we explained before, and by discarding a card you can get the eternal favor of the god. Tribunes, tribunate, I guess, and eternal favor of the gods are harder to obtain than other stuff like laurels and money and legions, but you just need them once and you have the entire victory condition. And the game ends immediately as soon as someone gets to the required number of victory conditions. So you keep playing a round after another, and whoever gets there first wins. So there are another couple of little mechanics that I didn't mention during the review, but they are minor. There is an additional way to get laurels. One of the factions provide you a temporary worker for your following turn, and you have a bidding to lock down one faction every round in order to prevent other people from stealing it from you. But what is interesting in the game is that there is no engine building mechanism as in many other worker placement games. And while I like building an engine in those games, what keeps this one fresh and interesting, and to me there are few games that have done the same after that, is that you never get to keep your stuff. Your factions will be taken over by other players. There is nothing you can do. Yes, there is the little auction and bidding for protection that I mentioned, but you cannot win that every round. You cannot use it to defend all of your factions. So faction will switch controller, and you will be reaping the benefits from different sources. So it's a fast-moving and fast-paced game, not only for the spaces on the board, but also for what are you going to do next. The cards are not that many. You see 12 cards or so every round, and all players are tapping in that pool of cards. So you really want to outsmart your opponents and try to understand what they are going for, and possibly beat them to that, or wait for them to get control and immediately after, in the next turn, snatch control from them. The game is really fun. In my experience, it worked well both with experienced gamers and with very light gamers, as a step beyond the gateway kind of game. The theme is decently brought forward by the cards and the board, and on top of that, it plays fast enough. With 5 players is under an hour and a half. It's great fun, great pieces, and I really recommend it.